right now. All right, guys, welcome back. Today we do have a very special guest on our channel. It's DATADASH. As you can see, we will be discussing a lot. We'll be discussing DeFi, yield farming, and so on and so forth. Now, you should know that this is only one part of this whole interview. So the second part will be on DATADASH channel. So you will understand later on when we end this part that you need to go to his channel. But Nick, welcome to the show. So good to have you here. How are you doing and what's going on in your life?
I'm doing well, man. I'm currently abroad right now, but just been basically working between covering the craze in DeFi over the last few months and talking about the broader macro perspective as central banks have been printing like crazy. But outside of that as well, just been working on my crypto wallet for basically Digifox and kind of tapping into the Ethereum and DeFi ecosystem. So as you can probably guess, as you've probably been talking about a lot on the channel, there's more to talk about now than ever, and a lot of it is probably outside of what we would expect to see in DeFi.
But so many people that watch my channel maybe don't know that you actually have your own DeFi project. You're not just a YouTuber. You also now have taken the step, you have transcended the YouTube space, and now you also have your own DeFi project, which is Digifox. So how did you start that, and how has the progress been building that?
Yeah, man. So it's been a little bit of a long journey. So I think as some might know and stuff, I got into crypto originally in like late 2016, really early 2017. And over the last few years, it was a bit stubborn to kind of see crypto pivot into so many different focuses. For me, it was very clear early on that, finance was going to be the focus for blockchain and especially what was being built on Ethereum. So when it came time that finally, protocols like Aave or ETHLend at the time, Compound, and also as well decentralized exchanges like Hybrid Network were finally kind of getting categorized into this category known as DeFi or decentralized finance. For me, it kind of was the pivotal moment, kind of in early 2019 when I first heard about the term, where I was like, okay, it's finally time that people are starting to realize that this is going to be the killer application for crypto. So I went out, I basically self-funded for the last year the development of my own smart wallet, or basically cryptocurrency wallet that people can use that abstracts the need for private keys and a lot of the complexities, but also allows you to tap into a lot of the DeFi ecosystem instantly. So being able to tap into Compound and Uniswap, and also as well some of the CeFi players in DeFi as well. So players like Celsius Network that offer higher rates of interest, but have a centralized custodian at the end of the day. So I wanted to basically build something that found that perfect mix of utility, and also outside of that as well, something that tapped into the kind of emergence of DeFi. And I think, just seeing Uniswap grow as well as Compound over the last year, I think we finally hit our pivotal moment. I know some of that's been around yield farming and the craze around that, but a lot of it I think is just people realizing now that this stuff works. There's incentives now to provide liquidity to engage in these services. And you're starting to see some of the big players, some of the large exchanges really starting to try to catch up. But yeah, all in all, Digifox is just aimed at being an all-in-one finance app, trying to abstract a lot of the ends of crypto. And it's been an extraordinary journey. We did an equity crowdfund. I decided I didn't want to go down the route of venture capital and raising from accredited VCs. And we were actually able to raise over so far around $450,000 from, sometimes larger investors, but also everyday investors as well, which is really cool.
I mean, that's so good to see. It's like I always say on my channel, the best thing is to actually build something. And this is something I've been thinking about, so this use case that you have. And I've seen a few others like Dharma and a few others doing similar things. And to me, it was a no-brainer because you see that in DeFi, we had DAI savings rate. We still have it. But a few months ago, it was high. It was like 7-8%. So one of the simplest use cases you could ever do is to just take people's fiat, put it into DeFi, give them 7%, and maybe take a small cut. But now that the DAI savings rate is lower, how do you see the most appealing feature of DeFi to the mainstream that you, for example, through Digifox can offer? What is the most appealing selling point in DeFi right now for the mainstream?
Yeah, to that point, I'd actually counter, and this is why I believe that interest income is still probably the best application right now in a world of, in Europe and negative interest rates. The US is heading there soon in the next year or so, and then also in Japan and a few other parts of Asia. So as we're starting to see negative interest rates come into the equation and we have mass printing of money, savers are getting hit more than anyone. And I think that it is going to still be the killer application because the problem right now with DeFi versus, say, maybe a more centralized player like Celsius, where right now, through Celsius, through Digifox, you're able to get up to almost 11% interest right now. And some people say, how is that possible? Like, that can't be. But it really can be, because right now, there is so much institutional demand right now within the cryptocurrency space, who make up the majority of the borrowers for stable coins and other cryptocurrencies. And in this case, On the depositor side, we're not getting enough depositors coming in. So what's really great is the market provides this great incentive. It's a dynamic of supply and demand where if you're someone who has just money sitting in a bank account, you can actually go park it into these smart wallets. And like you mentioned, there's Dharma and Arjun. I recommend people go check them all out. I think they're fantastic. But for us in this case, we do something that's different, and we pay the highest savings rate out of any smart wallet because we tap into players like Celsius. But in that point, Ivan, as you mentioned, like my new kind of favorite application, obviously outside of the interest income, is seeing decentralized exchanges finally like practical. And now you can get it within a mobile application. It used to be that you had to use MetaMask and you had to go through, using these really complex kind of interactions on Web3 in order to actually get to the point where you can make a DEX trade. And there was still concerns about smart contract security. But now we've gotten to this point where we had almost $2 billion in liquidity in Uniswap back a couple of days ago. And now you can trade a lot of cryptocurrencies at better rates than what you get on Coinbase. And no wonder we're seeing volumes go past Coinbase and some of the major established exchanges. It works. There's no downtime. Yeah, the gas fees are kind of high. But the point I always bring up is that for most traders right now, I think in the crypto space who are active, the fees are still minimal for some of the returns you can get on some of these cryptos. So, we'll see Uniswap and a lot of these players move to layer 2. That's what's really exciting for me. But decentralized swaps, very clear use case from the get-go. Why I was a big fan of Kyber, and outside of that as well, still earning interest income. I think those are the best applications right now.
Right. The most important thing with DeFi is just the innovation it opens up. So for example, like your application, without DeFi, I don't know how many years you would have to spend to get regulatory approval and to really have custody over funds. But with DeFi, you don't have custody over funds. You don't run the exchange. It's on the blockchain. You just build a nice user interface, which is amazing that you can innovate in this fashion without actually needing to go through the traditional route and actually be the custodian or actually provide the exchange, because now anyone can build anything that is finance related. Maybe you want to do something with synthetics, with derivatives. Maybe you have some kind of other idea. You can do it in your bedroom, basically. And you have the open protocols that allow for that. So you yourself, you're not providing the service of synthetics. It is already on the blockchain. You only do the interface. And I think that unlocks so much power and so much experimentation. It opens up this worldwide financial sandbox for developers to go wild in and develop different things and try different things out and give them to users and actually experiment with real money from day one. And you don't have this responsibility because you just build an interface. So how do you see this? Do you agree with this analysis, and how do you see the future of the space in terms of innovation?
Yeah, absolutely, Ivan. I think you put it really well. It's funny because people used to laugh at this concept of decentralized exchanges and all these services. But the way I kind of viewed in this case on the regulatory perspective that you mentioned, I think is very true. The reason why I think right now regulators and the whole system are kind of allowing DeFi to operate as it is because it is basically peer-to-peer in every aspect that you're doing. I mean, if anything, you're interacting with a smart contract. So with like Digifox, if I send a payment to you to your crypto wallet, you could use another Ethereum wallet as well. You don't have to use Digifox. But if I send you crypto, it's like I'm exchanging, like imagine I'm stretching my arm across the world over to where you're based out of, and I'm sending you, a bit of cash, whether it's in USDC or Ether. I'm able to send that money to you peer-to-peer. We're not going through any money transmitter. Along with that as well, outside of that, when we're interacting with Uniswap or Compound, these kind of providers are just simply smart contracts. They're not the Compound team that's holding the funds in custody. And this really does open up a really interesting world where we can start to minimize trust. And that's very important, I think, for a lot of people. Maybe not us, maybe in the Western world where we've gotten very comfortable with banks. But even nowadays, I think during times that we're living in right now through COVID and everything, I think people are starting to realize that maybe minimizing trust might be a good idea to some degree, or at least diversifying. And then, of course, as well, on that spectrum of DeFi, you do have those traditional players that do still have regulatory licenses and do things in more kind of a traditional sense. And I think that that's fine. That's why we integrate partners like Celsius. But I think at the end of the day, what we're going to find is, whereas Celsius, for example, as a centralized player, has a very big benefit that, unlike Compound, it can be a matchmaker. It can basically balance the order book between loans and deposits, and that's how they can maintain very high interest rates. I think Compound is going to build incentives as well as other lending protocols to incentivize, as we've already seen with yield farming in a sense, to basically balance the books and maintain higher rates to get more of a stable market dynamic and find out what real kind of rates there are for borrowers and lenders. So I'm excited, man. I think it's very, very cool. And I think you're right. It's opening up the opportunity where everyday people can be the developers here to actually start building these rather than having to depend on large financial institutions.
Yes, and what we're seeing right now is really the birth of this new ecosystem because it's so early on. And while we see some other apps as well, as we mentioned, like Dharma and Argent, it's still so early on that there is no clear leader, I would say, and it's still very, very, very early days. Now, in terms of other DeFi trends, what are you excited about that we haven't seen in the past that is growing?
Yeah. I think, what we've really seen good right now and what we're doing with Digifox is focusing more on kind of a retail focus. I think that there's plentiful amounts of retail applications like for everyday people, for example. But one thing I'm really interested to see is the kind of wave. I know a lot of people have talked about synthetics and those kind of plays. I think more than anything, building like different forms of derivatives in decentralized finance will be pretty interesting as well. I know there's Opium Exchange. There's a few other ones that are starting to come up that seem pretty interesting to me. But just I guess to kind of put it in perspective, Ivan, what I think is so amazing is over the last few weeks with Uniswap coming up like it has, it's obviously clear that trading is going to be the first major massive killer application in DeFi. It already has become that to a degree. What I find very interesting is you're starting to see the big exchanges, and with all due respect to CZ from Binance, he even tweeted out yesterday the reason they listed sushi with all this crazy yield farming is literally because they're going to lose the volume. It's going to go somewhere else. And it's been going to Uniswap, obviously, because that's where sushi rewards people to put the liquidity. And it's amazing, man, to just see like within just about a month or two, how the tone has changed from, this DeFi thing's a bit of a joke and it's okay. It's something that it's cute. It can kind of sit in the corner over there. And now it's becoming the standard. And it's just a matter of building the retail focusing applications, the institutional applications as well. As like we did, for example, I think with abstracting keys and stuff, I think that's going to be a very big step for DeFi. But in the sense of trends, yeah, I think anything to do with like getting some form of yield is going to be very important. And I think the more stable rates of like 5 to 10% are going to be much more long-term and lasting because there is practical demand for stable coins. And as cryptocurrencies as a market continue to grow over the next year or two, we will see not only an interest in more people depositing, which million people would say, oh, that's going to drive down rates, but there's actually about an equal, if not greater amount of demand for stablecoin liquidity as people take leverage positions on crypto. You have exchanges who need basically stablecoins to provide liquidity and other business services within the exchange. So I think that we're going to see these rates last for a long time. And there's no other market in the world that's going to provide such easy and instant access to everyone to its applications that are interacting with these protocols, but for such a long period of time as well. So I think it'll be a huge entry for the next wave of crypto. And once you've got them in for the yields, they'll go for the altcoins and kind of get into the crypto space as a part of their portfolio.
I want to save the dark side of DeFi with yield farming for your discussion on your channel. So stay tuned for that, guys. Go to DATADASH channel for that. But I think what's interesting that you mentioned that Binance, they listed sushi very quickly because they said that we're gonna lose liquidity otherwise. CZ came out and tweeted, and also now they launched their own yield farming product, basically abstracting a lot of the things you can just start farming through Binance, which I feel is the only reason the centralized exchanges will be still here. It is the fact that they can abstract the keys. For example, like your service, you don't need to care about the keys, you don't need to care about the fees, and also you get fiat on-ramp. So that is where I see centralized exchanges still operating and being the leaders even in the future. And I also want to ask you how you did this key abstraction, because in your wallet, it is still non-custodial, right? I still own, you don't have my funds, right? But still, the key is somehow connected to the email address. So can you please explain how that works, that you can reset the keys with the email?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm probably not the best at like technically explaining it because it is a bit technical, but basically every single wallet is what's known as a smart contract wallet. So you're deploying every time you generate an account through Digifox. We're actually working on an update now to actually split this into two categories because gas fees are quite high. But in the new update, you're going to be able to have a standard wallet where you can use Celsius and earn interest, and you can buy cryptocurrencies through our fiat on-ramps. But for someone who wants to tap into DeFi, we generate what's known as a smart contract wallet. And the 7,000 plus users, I think it's around 7,200 right now, that have active smart wallets, each of those were an independent smart contract deployed on the Ethereum blockchain. Now, the way that it works in this case is that I always kind of say it's like a two-token system where basically in order to generate, in this case, and recover a smart wallet, and this is where you need to use your private keys in this case. Let's say, for example, you lose, for example, you log out of your account in this case and you want to recover your account. Or for example, maybe your phone got damaged and you got a new SIM card. In this case, you'd basically do a 2-token recovery system where you get 6 digits sent to your phone and 6 digits sent to your email. And this basically puts in a call once you provide the right information, in this case, to call in and create a new smart contract. It's a bit technical, but all in all, what the great thing about it is that it doesn't require that you have to manage your private keys. What happens is the key pair that's saved onto your phone, so you don't have to remember it. You can always recover it through your phone and email. And this is what Dharma, it's what Argent, and a lot of other smart wallets, I think Gnosis as well does something similar. It's something that's becoming much more mainstream because it's familiar to people, right? And the thing too is, one thing I always hint on, Evan, I'd like to get your opinion on this as well. I think for me personally, I believe it's just as secure as a seed phrase, if not better, because a lot of people, I know the vast majority of people I entered into crypto would download a wallet, and if it didn't make them write down that seed phrase, they probably weren't going to write it. And sometimes they would deposit crypto. So it's, I think above all, again, maybe you can have some different wallets who take different approaches. I think it's a really great system, and it's kind of an evolution of the better user experience that we're seeing in the whole industry.
For sure, I need to do a bit of research on exactly how that protocol works, because as you say, it seems to become a standard now that you can do this on-device storage of the key, but then you can recover it. But it sounds very interesting and obviously very important from a user interface perspective. That being said, guys, we are continuing the discussion on the DataDash channel. We are going to discuss yield farming and a lot of other things. So go to his channel as soon as possible. DataDash, see you in a few seconds.